Good morning, everybody. It is your Self Shift crew back for a Sunday morning podcast on a beautiful, cold Sunday morning here in the beginning of March 2025. We've got Patrick here, Doug,
Hey, everybody.
Derek,
Hey, good morning.
and we have, as usual, have a really good subject, right? Today, we're going to talk about something that we've hit on actually the last couple of podcasts, but this one is, I know, near and dear to my heart. I think we've all got some really good examples of how we live this in our personal transformation perspective. But the subject for today is create your identity and live it. We don't discover ourselves, we create ourselves. So I'm going to kick it off with a quote like we usually do. I had to search a little bit for this one. This one's from Alan Watts. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. And I had not heard that one before, but that really, really resonates with me. So before we jump in, let's go around the horn and get some initial thoughts. Derek.
Yeah, I connected with a quote too from George Bernard Shaw that life isn't about finding yourself, but life is about creating yourself. And I found that very appropriate for today's discussion as we dive into this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug.
I want to miss out on the quote train. Oh, I got one. But author C.S. Lewis, he said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And I think that's really powerful because, whatever has gone on in the past, whatever identity you felt like you were before, you can take specific actions. You can, define specific goals for yourself or whatever, and you can move towards the person you want to be versus, who you are by default.
It was really good. I'd not heard that one either. So we are off to a strong start on our quotes today. So I'm gonna kick it off, and again, like everything we talk about on the channel, is this one has been major part of my personal transformation, or my personal journey, because, and I think a lot of people are on autopilot, right? They are just reacting. They're on their programs are running, and they're just going through life, going through the motions. And I'm not saying that people that until you discover that, right, till you become aware that the fact that you actually do control your destiny and your future, and you truly are the architect of your life, you stay in that pattern, right? And these things, until you become aware. So I've got four things I want to double click on. Awareness, making sure or becoming aware of certain things, because all change begins with awareness. Intention. What is your intent? What do you want to do? Visualization of that intent, and of course, meditation, right? Now, I'm going to start with a really, really concrete example in my personal life. And I think this sums up a lot of the key concepts here. Is that although I've never been officially diagnosed with social anxiety, I had serious, issues with being very anxious in social situations. And that manifested itself in many, many ways over the years. But one of the key things was public speaking. I was actually terrified of public speaking back when I was, younger and in grade school and in high school and stuff like that. And one of the first steps that I took to overcome this, and, I read, Atomic Habits many, many years after that. But instead of, because, you get to college and stuff, you got to do presentations, you got to, get in the working world, you got to start speaking in public, right? I mean, literally, if I had to give a talk, I didn't sleep for days before it. I was practicing and actually probably fueling the anxiety by doing it that way. But I got to the point where I discovered, I'm not sure back, this was many, many years ago, the fact of, as opposed to identity or just setting goals or targets, what is your true identity? And so I kind of discovered or stumbled upon the fact that as opposed to giving this speech, I wanted to have the identity of a public speaker, which was kind of an epiphany for me before. This was many, many years ago before I really got into the meditation stuff and that type of thing. And I would visualize myself, and I still do it to this day, visualize myself walking up slowly, very methodically, opening a book or getting my notes out, and then slowly giving the discussion of the speech and making contact with folks in the audience and that type of thing. So when I got visualized the intent of, I am a public speaker, I am a public speaker, and I could visualize that and actually feel it, feel the, I don't know if the adrenaline's the right word, but the feeling of satisfaction of knowing that, I gave it my best shot and that I'm actually up here speaking and that type of thing. I'm engaging with the audience, really transformed how I thought about that type of thing, right? And so using that identity based, this is the person that I want to be. I want this as part of my portfolio. really transformed how I do that. And I actually got, to have the privilege of speaking in public on, certain things from an interoperability and other type of perspective. And to this day, that visualization has really, really helped me in taking on the identity of a public speaker. Doug.
Yeah, definitely kind of double clicking in on the autopilot thing. Again, I think in the early parts of your life, in the teens, as you go through high school, as you are in college, a lot of times you aren't really connecting with your self identity. You're thinking about what you think your parents want you to do, or what you think your friends want you to do. And, I think it's probably exacerbated in our generations today because of social media and other things. So they're also like, I see these other people out here that are my age that are, have this influencer following or other things. But the point is, like, in order to kind of get off autopilot, you really have to stop and connect with yourself. And you really have to spend time thinking about, like, the point you were making about the identity that you want to be. Like, and I think even for me, as you go through your 20s and 30s, you'll get into periods of autopilot just because of what's going on in your life, with if you have had babies, or your job's just taking up a lot of your time. You'll get into autopilot, and you have to pull yourself up and start to think about it, and start to think about, like, what's important to you, and what is the person you want to be for you, not for others. And so I think, again, there was a large part of my life where I was on some autopilot, just kind of trying to do the best I could so that I would have, a decent career that would give me the money and things I needed to provide for my family. But it wasn't until, like, I was really unhappy at work that I finally just stepped back and said, like, what makes Doug happy? What makes Doug want to spend 8 hours of his day, 8, 9, 10, whatever hours of his day at work? And when he's at work, how does he make those feel more enjoyable? And, what's the identity I want to have at work? And because, even on that autopilot thing, I was seeking jobs and opportunities based on what I wanted others to think about me, and not what I wanted myself to think about me. And so, again, that was the time that I took the time to step back and say, you know, for myself, I want to be genuinely happy. And for me to be genuinely happy, I need to understand what makes me happy. So I went through my process of learning more about, mindfulness, which gave me the opportunity to observe myself and to respond to things instead of react. And I learned more about, like, I don't know if I've said it on the show, but I've said it a lot in mentoring things. Like, the 3 things that make you happy are who you work for, who you work with, and what you work on. And I put a lot more focus onto who I work with and what I work on, because I knew those had very strong effect on my happiness. And so, again, I was really digging in on the identity that I wanted versus the identity I thought others thought I should have, or other things like that.
Yeah, and just to double click on that before we kick it over to you, Derek, is I think a key point there is, if you don't create your identity and live it, somebody else will, or society will, or whatever. You'll become, again, a reactor as opposed to your own agent. So, Derek.
Yeah, I think in the autopilot, I'm gonna go a little opposite of that and say maybe a lot of humans today are also stuck in a rut. They've been driving their car on cruise control, they run off the road and they find themselves in a mud pit and they're just spinning their wheels now. And I would say that, and I've been there. I found myself, on that hamster wheel of just spinning in life, just spinning, spinning, spinning. Picking up one habit that's not healthy, or an addiction, or maybe there's a energy of anger or maliciousness or whatever it is, that negativity. You're stuck in that rut of negativity now because of the curveballs life's thrown you, or the experiences of life, or some kind of trauma or wounding or abuse, or a conditioning pattern of negativity that somebody's told you you're not good enough, or you're not. So you find yourself stuck in this rut, and we all do from time to time. So I would say that that's a pattern for everyone as well. Is they're just stuck and they don't know how to get a tow truck to get themselves out. And so today I feel like we have that opportunity to share some tools and some opportunities to be your own tow truck to get yourself out of that rut.
Yeah, no, I think that's key. And the fact that, and I'm going to double click on just a little bit of the science, right? The creator versus discoverer mindset, right? And I get the fact I don't want to dismiss discovery, right? You do have to discover yourself, like Doug, you were describing it very well. But don't underestimate or underappreciate the fact that you can be the creator as well, right? And you're not born with a fixed identity. You've got characteristics, personality traits, and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that you can't transform yourself, right? And I've been doing some online classwork in the field of, although I'm in the computer space, I'm taking some classes in positive psychology, and also the concept from Dr. Benjamin Hardy about your future self and the science that backs it up. That basically says even the way our memories are organized, right, are not so that you can recollect them accurately from the past, because memory is notoriously, poor as it relates to representing exactly what happened, but they're actually positioned to help you in the future, right? So it's pulling you forward, not that your memories are pulling you forward, but the fact that we've evolved as people to be future centered, right? Again, that doesn't mean you don't live in the present moment. You obviously live in the present moment. We talk about that all the time on this channel. But even being in the present moment is preparing you for the future and what your identity needs to be, or I'm sorry, what you want your identity to be. So I find that is fascinating that, the way the mind works really is to allow you to grow and to become the person that you want, as long as you're aware of it. To your point, both Doug and Derek, if you are in autopilot mode or on cruise control or whatever and don't recognize it, then you will never have this transformation. Once you understand that change is possible, you don't have to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago, then this can happen. And again, it's act this that helps me as well is sometimes I have to remind myself, act like that person. You may not completely be that person right now, but act like it. Act with the integrity and the character and treating people the way that you want to be. Become the person that you want to be, that you respect and that type of thing, and start acting like it. And we talked about on the other podcast, you know, action begets motivation, not the other way around, right? Start taking those positive actions. And I've been practicing that in my own personal life recently, where I've tried to, or have had a clear intention, and I do write my intentions down every day and say them to myself, to be a better person as it relates to my family, others in my life, and just be a kinder person, right? Doug loves to say, be kind to yourself. Yes, be kind to yourself, but also be kind to others. And I find myself just do it, just act like that person, and then it just becomes natural. Anyway, thoughts on that, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a point there, which is there's a lot of self-talk that goes on around like every day in life. You're telling yourself a narrative, and sometimes a lot of times, if you're not careful, it's a very negative self-talk narrative about, why didn't I do that? How come that went that way when I interacted with that person or gave that presentation or whatever? But, the point you were just making was act as if, or a lot of people probably hear it as fake it till you make it. And, I think the term I learned in the last couple weeks. So, and it's a term I probably have heard, but it just sort of resonated with me as self-efficacy. And so I was listening to the book Shift by Ethan Kross. He also wrote a book called Chatter, which is about that negative self-talk and trying to control the chatter in your head. But Shift is about controlling your emotions. And he was talking through a part about while you can't control the triggers of emotions, you can control how the emotion plays out, like the trajectory of the emotion. And like he was talking about self-efficacy, and I was like, oh my goodness. And that's exactly what we're talking about in today's thing is like it's having intentionality and believing that you can shape kind of your future self, and that you can be the actor, the person. You can be the thing that makes your future. You can affect the future identity that you want to have, and it's just really powerful. And I think that really aligns to your point as far as you have to have that belief in yourself, and then you have to start saying, this is the person I want to be. And then you have to believe that you can be that person you want to be with your daily intentions and the things like you were saying.
Yeah, live like you are that person. So, Derek, I'm going to set you up with a thought here, and I want to get your take on this. Intention is the steering wheel of our lives. What are your thoughts on that? Intention being the steering wheel of your lives, of our lives.
Well, everything that you do, there's an intention behind it. When you wake up and get out of bed in the morning, you have intention in that moment. I'm going to get ready and either take care of the kids, or I'm going to, take care of a loved one in some situation, or I'm going to go to work. There's an intention behind everything that you do. And so when we're talking about transformation here now, and we're talking about identifying that which no longer serves you and what it is that you want to create now as far as your best life, there has to be an intention behind that. And there's no way you can, there's not, if you're just saying, well, I want to change my life, but there's nothing, there's no substance behind that. There's no definition behind that. There's no intention to go out and talk to someone or to do a study of a book or an online class, or if you don't take some form of action, then nothing's going to ever change.
Yes, exactly.
There's a
Yeah,
very small chance it'll happen by accident, right? Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a slim to none, and just, and I'm going to quote James Clear a little bit. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. And I'm gonna share something just actually happened last evening, which I think it's related to some of the visualization and the intent that I've had recently. Um, and this is kind of how it played out. So again, one of my intentions that I'm going through right now is to be healthy and will have great well-being, right? It just, basically eat good food, only drink healthy food and drink, do intermittent fasting, and also keto, right? And so I set that intention and I relay it every morning when I visualize, what's going to happen at dinner or whatever. Or I visualize myself running, down the street or going to Planet Fitness or whatever. And so we decided as a family to go to dinner last night, and it wasn't my choice. But my wife and my son, and they wanted to go to the local Mexican place. And when they said it, something it just didn't. Okay, Mexican place. And historically, I like Mexican food. Don't misunderstand me. But we went, and it's a classic Mexican place where you get chips and salsa and big burritos as big as your head and all that kind of stuff. And we get there, and I'm looking, and the chips just don't even sound appealing to me, right? First of all, there's a lot of carbs in there, right? And then I ordered my usual burrito, naked burrito or whatever, and I couldn't eat it, right? It just did not appeal to me. Now, I would like to think that because I've set that intention and it's dropped into Patrick's subconscious mind, that I'm modifying those programs, which I hope that's really what's happening. But in the moment, I wasn't sure. And my wife and son are kind of looked at me, hey, you're not hungry? No, I'm not that hungry. It just doesn't taste as good as I would have historically thought it should be, right? So anyway, maybe there's nothing to it, but the fact that you can see, just like I talked about in public speaking or other types of things, when you set that intention and you start moving in that direction, you start taking action, the flywheel starts turning. So any thoughts, any similar experience that you guys have had or other takes on things?
Go ahead, Derek, if you have.
Oh, the thing I'll say is like, you were mentioning earlier, we all three live in the world of computers and software and development and, and IT. There's a concept in IT of how you build a product called, agile or safe methodology. And in that, there's this concept of like product owner, and the product owner gets to define, the creation of a product, from some aligned to some strategy. And so what I will say there is, you get to be the owner of your life. You get to visualize, you get to draw on paper, you get to meditate, you get to create your life, and you get to write new stories behind your life of what it's going to go. And so what I connect with what you just said is you're taking ownership of the product of your life, of wanting to be healthy. You're visualizing, you're thinking about it, you're reflecting, you're meditating on that. And so in that moment, when you're presented with something that was bad, you just chose, I'm not hungry right now. It's not aligned to what it is that I want for myself. And so that's what I would say is what happened there is you took ownership of something you want for your life, and you started creating those stories which align to that, what you want for your life.
Yeah, I think the common theme here is like the agency and the intentionality, right? So just taking ownership, like you said, and saying the only person that's going to figure out Doug's identity is Doug. And so that means I have to do, and I will say, like, from the discussions we have, like, I've struggled a little bit with what is my identity, what are my core values. And I spend time, probably more time than I should, kind of trying to think about it. Like, I'm probably overcomplicating it, but again, like my family's really important to me. So I'm always looking for ways to connect and spend time and do those kinds of things. That's just sort of owning that I need to kind of connect better with my core values and identify them. And then, recognize taking the time to do it, right? Because if you don't take the time to focus, you won't figure those things out. So it is about like agency. The ownership is on your thing. The only other, this can be my wrap up if we're going to move into that. But the only other thing I want to kind of take a moment and say is, like, important to all this is taking some time to step back and appreciate, be grateful, and content with what you do have in your life. So there is a danger when you're always looking to improve that you don't take the time to step back and appreciate the person you are and the positive impacts and influence you're having on people around you, and just being happy and content with what you already have. Again, you can still keep trying to figure out, even with that, where are some places I could maybe do better or help others more or things like that. So with that in mind, again, I'll throw in my typical closing statement of, be kind to yourself. Don't let that negative self-talk get you.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. Derek?
Yeah, just you have the greatest opportunity to create your best life. And you can start that right now after you listening to this. You can start that when you choose to start it. And that's the powerful thing, is be intentional, you know, go after what it is that you want, eliminate that which no longer serves your best interest, and you'll be immediately on the path to your best life and what it is that you want to create for.
Very well said. Very well said. And I'm gonna add, kind of in closing here, one thing is that um, what we talked about here as far as setting intentions, being the architect of your own life, keep in mind that don't become attached to the outcomes, right? Is some things are beyond your control. Focus on what is in your control, right? Set your identity, become that identity. But certain things, some outcomes may not be the way that you had planned those, right? And that's beyond your control. So keep that in mind. I do think, some of the key concepts you nailed another one there, Doug, was gratitude is, again, awareness. You've got to be aware of, first of all, what is your core values, as Doug and Derek have both said. You've got to align with your core values. You've got to take action. So awareness, intention. For me, it's visualization, meditation, and also gratitude. Be thankful for what you've got. All right. And in closing there, remember, be curious, not judgmental. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.